the sphere right here of Yod, or Yod, because in Hebrew there's no vowels, people debate over pronunciations like crazy. With Yod, that's a sphere of dreams, but also of the astral world. So,
about elemental correlations.
Thank you, elemental correlations.
That's okay.
Because Yod can also be seen as a sphere of the moon, going back to planets, and also either a watery sphere. But it's not traditionally all water. There's a watery aspect to it. So I'll correspond. Then if I'm taking this, oh, wait a minute. There's also 4 worlds. 1... That's a world. And there's 4 Kabbalistic worlds, and these 4 worlds will correspond to the 4 elements. Kyle's like, dang it, where have I heard this before? I think I screwed one up. I think it's more like that. Anyway, you can look in standard books on Kabbalistic correspondence, and there's plenty out there in the bookstore. Oh, I know what it is. Oh, sorry. I go on tangents. This is why coaches get this. With those different correspondences, I can say like, okay, I have dreams. I want to put my lucid dreaming experiences. I want to think of those in the sphere of Yod. So you can, like I said, use it as filing cabinet for dreaming experiences. Anyway, now Kalma.
Where did the elements get? This is the fun stuff.
Yeah, now we're there.
Not the Kalma tree like it's fun, but it isn't fun. It is fun. It's pretty fun. But I think that when we get into more modern stuff of how we can look at the elements and correlate them to things that we see every day in our own lives, is where we can really start to relate. And so I'm just going to pass these out. And these are some of the things that we have worked out with some basic correlations for the elements. Obviously, they're not complete because they're basically...
No thanks, but I do need a sheet.
Oh.
I just read this last night.
What? Did you get one?
That's great.
Oh,
Alright.
These are some very basic elemental correlations, but it's by no means complete. We left some room at the bottom. We can write some up on the board of some that we can work out really fast. But let's talk about the ones that we've got up here and why it is that they correlate that way. Some of them are going to be pretty obvious. Since we've already talked a little bit about the elements and things, the first thing we talk about is directions. And the reason the directions are so important to the elements is when you're in ritual, the first thing you do is call the elements to your ritual, and you call them from their origination or directional sun. So we talk about air and east. When we talk about new beginnings, the new beginning you have every day is sunrise, and the sunrise is in the east. So air and east are pretty much, it's pretty obvious why those correlate, and you think of it that way. Fire being south, not only because we think of south as the equator where it gets warmer, but also south is beneath you. And the further you go down, the warmer you get. Especially, when you're in Iceland. And if you go on top of a mountain, you'll freeze to death, and everybody's houses are down below like that. So If you look at Eskimos and stuff like that, their houses are always really low to the ground because that's where the heat is. So the heat comes from below. Also, when you think of fire, fire grows from the bottom and rises up. So you've got that southern hemisphere there too. West, obviously, you're talking about endings. So you're talking about the sun setting in the west and things like that. That correlates really well with east. And then north, obviously, the North Pole, coldness, and above. If you walk up into the upper parts of the atmosphere, you're going to get where the heat doesn't go so much. The air is thinner and colder and things like that. But in the northern regions of this planet are quite cold. So that's the directions in a nutshell. Was there anything else you wanted to add to directions? Or?
Directions, no.
No, okay.
Did you say where people have altars or starting rituals?
Oh, you mean where people start rituals to the east?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the new beginnings, things like that. And some people will say, well, you start to the north because north is the basis, but I've always been an east person because new beginnings.
And people put their altars in different places. Some people put their altar in the east. Some people put it near the north for Earth. Some people put it in the center. So it's whatever works for you. Good question.
Well, one thing I was wondering is, what's the main correspondence for witchcraft? Is there a preferred? I mean, as far as the elements or...
Yes, elements are the preferred correspondence.
You mean like what's
like
the
versus the other systems, or
Yeah, the elements are going to be your main correspondence in Wicca. They're basically universal throughout almost every type of witchcraft tradition. Obviously, some are going to differ, but and there are other elemental correspondences in different types, especially if you get into Celtic witchcraft, which is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the Greeks, if you look at the Norse, the Saxons, and even the Native Americans, they share very similar ideas about the elements.
You notice I put symbols underneath the words for the elements. Those are traditional Greek, the Platonic symbols for these elements. Like fire, I'm sure if you take in chemistry, you'll see, the triangle for fire, heat. You'll see that all the time. You might even see that all the time for water.
It makes sense if you think about it because, you've got your water droplets coming down.
Right.
You've got your fire rising up. And then you've got earth and air, which have different correspondences to the other. Some of it is, this is the opposite of that, and this is the opposite of that. Okay. Other ones we should talk about on here. Some of them, like you said, are pretty obvious. The colors, a lot of people get confused. Why is air yellow? Well, if you think of the first thing that I told you about was directions, that, the sunrise in the east, when the sun comes up, the sky is yellow. So that's the easiest way to correlate that.
Or also are people say, why water isn't blue where I come from? Water's more green. What do people say?
That has a lot to do with the relationship between water and air, because the water reflects off the sky, which is blue. So